So you're thinking of purchasing, or you have purchased one of these. This is the video for you. So in today's video we're going to be going through the differences between the care of a younger chinchilla and the care of a mature chinchilla. So we're talking about 12 weeks through to around 6 months of age for a younger chinchilla. Okay, so the first thing I'm talking about is bar spacing. Now for baby chinchillas, the recommended bar spacing is between half an inch and 3/4 of an inch. Anything bigger than that and your baby chinchilla could get their head stuck, or even worse, could escape. Baby chinchillas are quite deceptively small. Underneath all that fur, they are incredibly small and can squeeze through quite tight spaces. So you don't want your chinchilla getting stuck or escaping. So I know when I got my first chinchilla, Basil, the cage that I picked out for him, the actual bar spacing was way too big for a baby chinchilla and he could quite easily fit through them. So I had to wait till he was older to give him that cage. So in between time I had to put him in a temporary cage. You can actually convert a cage if it's too big, if the bar spacing is too big, by putting wire mesh around it. But I would suggest just go for a cage that has smaller bar spacing regardless. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is cage size. So if you've got a large cage like a double critination cage or something similar like my one here, you might want to consider blocking off part of the cage. They only have access to half the cage. The reason why I say this is often breeders will keep their chinchillas in smaller than average cages, and putting a baby chinchilla into a large cage straight away can actually stress them out. And also some baby chinchillas just do not know when to stop, and they could spend their whole entire day just running around this cage, and that can cause some health issues in the long term. Now if you've got a cage that you can't block off, for example you've got a large cage but it's not one that can be easily converted into two, then I would suggest the next thing to do would be to look at the design of your cage. And what you want to make sure is that from the highest point of the cage, the chinchilla can't fall too far, which means having lots and lots of ledges to break their fall. For example, with this cage, this is a similar cage to a critination cage, there's a hole there where they go from one section to the other. Underneath, I always, in all my cages, put a ledge, because that way, if they fall down that hole, they're not going to fall to the bottom of the cage, they're going to fall onto a ledge. So it's really important you have lots of ledges for them to break their fall. And just think about how your cage is designed. So, for example, look at the top of the cage and think to yourself, right, okay, if my chinchilla was to fall, where would they fall to? If they would fall a long way, put in lots and lots of ledges so that it can break their fall, because if a chinchilla falls a long way, they can get injured. Okay, so the next thing to consider is a will. Now, baby chinchillas under 6 months old should not have access to a will, and the reason for this is because young chinchillas have a little bit of a problem with regulating their blood sugar, and some chinchillas just do not know when to stop. So if you've got a chinchilla that wants to exercise constantly, it can end up getting low in blood sugar, and then what happens is they have seizures, or they become extremely exhausted, and also they have the potential for overheating as well. So yeah, it's very, very dangerous to let them have unlimited access to exercise wheels, because it's not a good idea to let them have access to unlimited exercise, because they could get potentially quite ill from that. And also there's some studies being done to say that it can cause stunts in a chinchilla's growth to have unlimited access to exercise. So it is something you need to consider, is the fact that you don't really need a will for chinchillas that are under 6 months old. I wouldn't recommend it at all. So the next one is out of cage time for your chinchilla. Now, if any breeders are watching, they'd probably send a lot of hate my way, saying that I'm giving out dangerous information, because most breeders will actually say absolutely, unequivocally, no time out of their cage at all until they reach 6 months old. Now, I think that's a bit unrealistic and a bit extreme. Personally, I think that it actually benefits the owner and the chinchilla for them to have a little time outside their cage just to explore and get used to humans and to get used to their environment when they do have playtime as they get older. So I think the key with this is moderation, and I mean heavy moderation. So if you are going to let your chinchilla outside their cage, let it be for 5 to 10 minutes, no more than that. Anything more than that can cause issues, simply because of the same reason why you don't have a wheel in your cage. It's because baby chinchillas don't know when to stop half the time, and if you give them a lot of time out of their cage, like anything more than 10 minutes, then they can get low in blood sugar, and then that can cause seizures and all kinds of problems, and they can overheat as well. It's all kind of things that can happen with them. You don't need them out for hours and hours. Please, please, please do not let your young chinchillas out for anything more than 10 minutes. So the next one is treats, and most breeders will actually say to you, don't give your chinchillas any treats until they reach 6 months of age. And now again, I think that this is a bit extreme. However, I can understand the reasoning behind this, and this is if your chinchilla gets digestion problems and has diarrhea, then it can be especially dangerous for a younger chinchilla, because a younger chinchilla body isn't going to be able to cope with that as well. So yeah, that's the reason why. But I would say stay away from commercial treats, stay away from anything too sugary. So things like goji berries, I'd leave alone. Rose hips, I'd leave alone for now until they get a bit older. Things that are hay based, you can give your chinchilla, or things that are like herby type things. So I've got some dried marigolds, some dried nettles, some dried raspberries. Obviously these are all in moderation, again, not every day. These are a treat, so not every day. And yeah, they're the sort of things that I like to offer my baby chinchillas. Nothing too processed, commercial, or sugary. Definitely nothing too sugary. So say goji berries, rose hips, bee pollen, I would leave those until they reach about 6 months of age. Things that are like dried leaves, apple sticks will be fine for a younger chinchilla. So the next thing is diet. Now the diet is pretty much exactly the same as an adult chinchilla. Good quality pellets, Timothy hay, but you might want to add in a little bit of alfalfa hay to the mix as well, just because it helps a baby chinchilla a little bit. So not every day, but just sprinkle some in every other day, some alfalfa hay. You don't want to overdo it, but yeah, it's worth doing. That's really the main differences between a baby chinchilla and an adult chinchilla, and it's more to do with restricting their exercise and restricting their treats that they have, and also making the cage safe for them. So correct bar spacing, and if you've got a large cage, making sure that if they were to fall from the highest height of the cage, they won't fall particularly far. So they're the main things that you need to consider when looking after a baby chinchilla. So yeah, I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, give it a thumbs up, and think about subscribing. Cheers, goodbye.